people are switching to T-Mobile because they're paying for their early termination fees and everything.
Yeah.
Got a notes section back here. I didn't realize note pages.
Yeah, so they're taking care of it.
Just instead of that book.
I think there's some charts, some note pages. You got
Charts.
yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in there. Maybe not that one. It's in Life and Time.
Oh, the other one. Interesting.
Yeah. It's good to have. You got it. All right. So, okay, we got chapter 5, verse 10. All right. Rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren. The elder women as mothers, the younger as sisters with all purity. Honor widows that are widows indeed. But if any widow have children or nephews, let them learn first to show piety to them and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before God. Now she that is a widow indeed and desolate trusteth in God, and continueth in supplications and prayers night and day. But she that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth. And these things give in charge that they may be blameless. But if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. Let not a widow be taken into the number under 80 years old, having been the wife of one man, well reported of for good works, if she have brought up children, if she have lodged strangers, if she have washed the saints' feet, if she have relieved the afflicted, if she have diligently followed every good work. But the younger widows refuse, for when they have begun to wax one on against Christ, they will marry, having damnation, because they have cast off their first faith. And withal they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, not only idle, but tattlers also and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not. I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully, for some are already turned aside after Satan. If any man or woman that believeth have widows, let them relieve them, and let not the church be charged, that it may relieve them that are widows indeed. Okay, so just threw all those verses in there right now.
Oh, okay.
Get them out of the way.
I'm looking, I'm going,
Yeah.
Yeah, just caught up with it right there.
Alright, so in sections here, so I'm just going to break through and go through sections. We're covering verses 1 and 2 right now. Okay. So that whole section that we're going to be doing tonight,
it doesn't have all the verses in that.
okay, it's doing a lot of things. Alright, it's one, giving criteria and how to take care of widows. We're seeing guidelines with which they have to meet, because the church is just not going to take any widow that falls in across the doorstep. There are certain things they have to be, like they actually have to be a member of the church.
Right.
There have to be certain things that they are doing currently that they have shown in the past that they've done. Certain age limits. They're trying to defuse what you might call the abusive welfare mentality. Mm-hmm. So they're not wanting to take people who can actually provide for themselves, or get into trouble while doing it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of narrowing it down at the same time, giving guidelines, and we're going to get into each and all of those. So the first two verses, rebuke not an elder and the elder women. Okay. The word elder in verse 1 actually designates an older man and not an office.
Okay.
The reference to older women in verse 2 substantiates the same conclusion. All right. Timothy was to refrain from verbally attacking an older man in the congregation. Respect for age must temper expression of reproof of an old man's misdemeanors. Older persons were to be entreated as fathers and mothers, okay, while the younger men and women were to be dealt with as brothers and sisters. So the respect of the family atmosphere was actually prevalent.
Okay.
And was to be extended also outside of just like, say, your immediate family, the church family as well. Okay, so you treated them with a level of respect. There was a way to approach them, there was a way to speak to them, there was a way to honor them, and rightfully so with their age. Okay. With all purity, it disallows any indiscretion that might be prompted by such a relationship. Ministers must avoid the dangers of impropriety that can be fostered by close associations. So it was to keep it respectful. Okay. If you give respect, you're showing respect.
Right.
So in all those relationships, you can expect the same throughout. Verse 3. Okay, so we're going to look at verse 3.
One second.
Sure, sure. And I don't know if you can... One second. Yeah, there are. Okay. Parakaleo on verses 1 and 2. To beg or beseech, just to entreat. Did you get that? Just making sure that stuff that I have in my notes is actually in here too, and vice versa. In case I might have something they don't, I can give you some more. Okay. Huge experience. Okay. All right. So in verse 3, we see the word honor, Timeo. I don't think they have that in the book,
No.
so I'm gonna write that too. Timeo. It's lost my place. Hold on. Timao. Tomato, tomato. I'll try to do my best to stand out of the way of the board.
There you go.
Okay, and this is the word honor. Okay, it means to venerate or revere.
Venerate.
Yeah, venerate or revere, and revere. So it's a high honor, basically. I don't have that in the book. They don't. Actually found one. Alright, basically conveys the idea of properly appreciating the value of someone to the whole body or to the cause. Okay, the term and the context indicate that financial support is due to those who are so honored. So there's a high honor being bestowed upon this person or persons. But they are to be widows indeed, or those who are absolutely without children or relations. Because the widows indeed, okay, versus just your other widows, okay, there's actually classification of widows now. These widows don't have anybody to take care of them. They're have no family, there's no, like their children can't support them in any way. There's no extended family, like a brothers, sisters, brother-in-laws, all that kind of stuff that would be directly responsible for them. They're without children or relations. The basic thought in the word widow is that of loneliness. So they're basically all by themselves. Okay. The word comes from an adjective meaning bereft and speaks of her resultant loneliness as having been bereft of her husband. Okay. The added word indeed places the emphasis upon those whose circumstances are characteristic of real childless widowhood. Paul alludes to widows in 1 Corinthians 7 and 8, where he advises them against remarrying. Okay, they're mentioned as a class, specific class in Acts 6:1. So there's actually a classification of indeed widows. They're in connection with the appointment of the 7. And also Acts 9 and 39, from the very first, the church recognized its obligation to care for their support. Okay. A widow in the East was peculiarly desperate and helpless. In return for their maintenance, certain duties were required of them, such as the care of orphans, sick, and prisoners. Okay. So it wasn't just something for nothing. Everybody contributed, contributed and gained something out of it, and it was a reciprocal system, basically.
Right.
So now in verse 4, we see, but if any widow had children or nephews, let them learn first to show piety at home and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before God. This is the only usage in the New Testament of the word ekgona. That might not even be in there. No, it's not.
Ekgonos?
E-K-G-O-N-A.
Oh, no. For nephew?
And it means nephews, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they have it Ekgonos.
Okay. Slightly different word there. Okay. Okay. It's translated as nephews. If a widow has children or grandchildren, they should assume the responsibility for her support. Requite literally means to give, return, or compensate. Okay, so requite, it literally means to give, return, or compensate.
To give or compensate?
Mm-hmm. It basically carries the idea that children are to compensate their parents by being responsible for their care when it's actually required. That is the price you pay for being raised in that house. I'm kidding around, but yeah, the responsibility of a family is to care for its own. And that's good and acceptable before God. And in verse 5 we see, now that she is a widow indeed and desolate, trusteth in God, and continueth in supplications and prayers night and day. Verse 5, the phrase, a widow indeed and desolate. Okay. Munamai, or manumai. We have that. I don't see that one. Quick scan, but I do not see it. Okay. My Greek really stinks. I just cannot. I can't get my head around it. It's just one of those. There's a lot of other languages that I like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. You know, I can figure it out, or how it sounds, or pronounced, or
Yeah.
Greek is just, when they really say it's all Greek to me, it really is all Greek to me. There's no way around it, which really stinks in some ways, but I can memorize that, I can spell it for you, but for me to sit and try and actually go through and pronounce it, I'm just lost. I have like this mental block with it or something, I don't know. Anyway, it basically means left all alone. Okay. Indicates a certain criteria should be met before she can become a ward of the church. So before becoming an actual responsibility of the church, she has no children or grandchildren who could provide for her maintenance. Okay. So there's absolutely nobody that can actually do this job in relation. She trusts in God, meaning she demonstrates faithfulness as a Christian. Okay. She prays continuously, indicating that since she had endured hardships, she's sensitive to the needs of others and so intercedes for them regularly. Okay. The prayer ministry of such godly women has made a difference in many lives, churches, and ministries around the world. Such care and activity make the widows deserving of support from the church. Okay. Basically, I mean, when you really think about it too, they have gone from their life transition, since they had no children or grandchildren. Okay, that was not a part of their life and their daily duties and everything. So really their function centered on their husband and God. Okay, so now that their husband's no longer responsibility or in the picture, so to speak, now it's all God. Like their entire life has just now become all God, completely. Their duties and responsibilities aren't divided or split in any way. So in that respect, they're spending more time praying, more time serving God, more time just being sensitive to those needs, which would make sense.
No, are they talking about, is he talking about like the older widows in this, or just...
Yeah, the widows in need, right?
Because I thought I read, just going through this last night, I thought I read somewhere where it was talking about that they were almost encouraging, I guess you would say, younger widows to get married so they wouldn't get caught up in idle things.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yeah, there's actually an age mentioned, which is 3
Okay.
score.
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of get more into that where it actually mentions. But yeah, you're correct. There's actually like an age, so to speak, that if they're like younger than this age,
Right.
then that's Paul saying you need to really go this route and be this way, because you're able to take care of yourself, and you know, otherwise you're just gonna be sitting around getting caught up
Yeah,
in
right.
and stuff you shouldn't. And those who are older than that age qualify also. So he's being very, very literal in the description of guidelines. Like, they are a class unto themselves, and here's what establishes them as that class, basically. So very specific. It's good. I mean, it really is, because there's no doubt as to
Boy,
really meant it.
great set of criteria for welfare. Just saying. And look, it's not a 50-page bill.
All right, so verse 6 we see, but she that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth. Okay, any widow who lives luxuriously or a life of careless self-indulgences disqualifies herself from special consideration by the church. That would make sense.
Yep.
Okay. Is dead is a present participle indicating that while she is still physically alive, she is useless or as good as dead to both God and the church. Such a person is dead weight on the church and unworthy of its continuing care. So verse 7, and these things give in charge that they may be blameless. Paul encouraged Timothy to admonish the widows to be blameless, irreproachable, and therefore deserving the attention and care of the assembly. Okay, so they're not to go out and raise all kinds of Cain and everything out there and going crazy, and then coming in going, oh, okay, my meek mild. Doesn't work like that. Verse 8, we see widows who are faithful to God and meet the spiritual criteria are to be first cared for by their own, meaning the descendants, okay, referred to in verse 4. A believer who refuses to take care of his own family is worse than unbelievers, for even they recognize their obligation to their own. Okay? Such a one has in effect repudiated the law of love upon which the whole Christian faith actually stands. Okay. So, that pretty much lays it out. Okay, now they're skipping on to verse 16. Actually, from that point.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go quickly through like the other in-between verses, because I think that by being able to have that small section, you're able to bridge the two and possibly gain a deeper understanding. Sometimes I think they tend to leave certain things out just for time's sake and everything, but we usually do pretty good. So, because it actually does get into some of the other guidelines and other, yeah. So verses 9 and 10, these verses actually continue the spiritual qualifications for the church-supported widows. So it's going to give more of an in-depth guideline here. Verse 9 actually adds the dimension of age. So here's where we're going to hit that. She must be at least 60 years old. She must also have been the wife of one man. Or more precisely, married only once, not having divorced one husband to remarry another. So it literally specifically means the wife of one
Wow.
man. That's it. No divorce, no remarrying. Must be at least 60 years of age. Okay. Now, some actually interpret the statement simply as a prohibition of polygamy. Okay. That's really, yeah, it's so funny. Oh, we'll just leave that open to interpretation of. No. She must be known for good works, which include the rearing of children. The modern feminist movement has actually downplayed the woman's role as homemaker. Okay. Except this past week. I have to interject that. Oh wow, I could go on a list here. Okay. Our vice president said that with the new Health Care Act, women can quit their jobs and stay at home now.
With their, single mothers.
They're able to do it.
Yeah.
Also, we had other people in the administration say that now, since they don't have to work as much, now they can be home more to cook dinners.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some people who, if they had said that same remark, would have been probably called sexist because they said, "Oh, now there are places in the kitchen."
Right.
Anyway, I won't go too much into that. But
It all relates to context. Of course, nobody wants to work, so now it's convenient to be the
Exactly.
homemaker.
There you go. As long as it's convenient,
Exactly.
it's all about that. But yeah, so anyway. But regardless of what they're saying, typically, yeah, it's been a war on the house and the family unit. Women, their role is the homemaker. I mean, that was given to them by God. Okay, that is where they have a huge impact. You know, it's amazing. It really is. Wanton women who have no concern for the Christian faith have so influenced our generation through the media and the political processes that many godly women have actually unnecessarily left their homes and marched off to work, putting small children in the care of others. Very dangerous. You know. Such action could be a surrender to the selfish, materialistic spirit of our day, perhaps fulfilling the prediction of Timothy chapter 4, verse 1, giving heed to seducing spirits. Now in verse 11, the younger widows are those under 60 years of age. They are not automatically the responsibility of the church. All right? Presumably they are still capable of working in some way to support themselves, and they have a better chance of remarriage. Okay? Better chance. I'm not saying they're going to, but their odds are better. If the church supports them fully, they will have much idle time, which could lead to problems. Okay? They wax wanton, meaning to feel the impulses of sexual desire. Locke said that the real meaning here is to grow physically restless and so restive against the limitations of Christian widowhood. So, under 60 years of age, yeah, they're still viable in a lot of ways. Still having certain thoughts, desires, feelings, needs, wants. We go on and on. Yeah, so makes sense. I mean, verse 12. To the English translators of 1611, okay, the King James Version, the word translated damnation did not necessarily carry the ideas of future punishment or doom. Which is usually the first thing anybody would think, immediately off the bat. Probably a more modern and understanding rendering would be condemnation. The Greek word simply means judgment. Okay, so it's more like judgment. This verse seems to mean that by remarrying, a widow who is supported by the church has cast off her first faith or pledge, or solemn promise to the church, or solemn promise to serve the church. Some commentators actually understand this verse refer to marriage outside the faith and rebellion against the plain admonitions. Okay, so such a relationship could easily lead to the practices mentioned in verse 13 and thereby result in divine chastening. So they're leaving themselves more open to a lot of other things, basically. They're broadening their horizons when they should not be, in rebellion. Verse 13, the tendency of fully supported younger widows is toward idleness and toward becoming busybodies who wander from house to house gossiping about others. Today it's even more so happening, with texting and cell phone. Facebook, yes. Facebook, exactly. That's a huge one. That is a huge one. Yeah, it really gives a whole new meaning to the term, what's that term they use when you're like just following people around?
Stalking.
There you go, yeah. Facebook
Creepy.
stalking. Yeah, creepy, that's another one. Yeah, some widows that could be creepers and stalkers on Facebook. Alright, so in verse 16, this verse actually summarizes, we're back in the book here, summarizes the comments in verses 3 through 15. Okay? It simply reiterates that believers are to care for the widows and their families so they do not become the responsibility of the church. In this way, the assembly will be free to take care of those who are left alone without any family at all. So basically, it's really, what's summarizing is basically the church is more able to take care of the ones who truly need it versus those who don't necessarily absolutely have need. So it's the same thing like we're dealing with in current day politics and budgetary and everything else. If you have a dozen eggs and you have X amount of people, the people who don't need those eggs, who can actually go out and get their own, well, they need to. So that the ones who can't obviously have access to more. It's a very simple concept. For some reason, we cannot get certain people in this world to figure that out.
Too hard.
I guess. The rest of us are walking around going, that makes common sense. Why can't they figure it out? So now in verse 17, let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine. Okay. Verse 17, the topic now shifts from the care of widows, okay, to the subject of ruling elders. This verse speaks of elders in a different sense from verse 1. Verse 1, we had seen, spoke of an older person in reverence, like your actual elder, okay? Here the reference is to elders who lead or pastor, okay? The titles of elder, pastor, shepherd, and overseer have the same basic connotation and are generally interchangeable. So now this is more of a spiritual elder versus a physical elder. Okay. Qualifications for such leaders are given in chapter 3, verses 2 through 7 of Timothy. Okay. But now the discussion turns to actually honoring the elders, protecting the elders, rebuking elders, and selecting elders. Okay. So I should probably write that down. So it's in terms of 1, honoring elders. Okay.
This is for verse 17.
Yeah. Forgive my writing. I really wish the board was a little higher. It makes a world of difference.
Just get on your knees and put your shoes on your feet.
That would work too. My knees are killing me still. From last week, I was doing some flooring in the shed and rolling out some, it was like some multi-seasonal dense rubber flooring.
Okay.
And it was still a little cold, and I tried to get it to flatten out some, and it really went well down. But yeah, it just took a while.
Bought nice, strong, solid plastic knee pads for when I'm going to be sanding that front porch and then the inside floor.
I honestly didn't think I was gonna get on my knees that long. That's what.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was cold out, it just did not help.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, yeah, concrete radiates cold, man, big time.
Mhm.
All right, so number 2, protecting the elders. Oh. Dash, dash. 3, we see rebuking elders. These sound like cellophane when I get them. That's so good. And selecting elders. Alright. So, honor, first of all, includes submission to their authority and obedience to them as spiritual leaders. But the Greek word used here, time, has broader intimations. While it does not mean respect and regard, it includes the thought of financial remuneration, just as honor in 5:3 involves monetary support. The root word appears in honorarium, something paid for certain services. Okay. So the scripture does not say pay them well because it deals with motives. The epistles often couch discussions about money and language only those with spiritual motives will discern. Harvest, seed, services, aroma, gift, bounty, blessing, grace. Similarly, today we do not say, here's your money. But instead we say, we want to honor you with this gift. Okay, so it's a little more, I'm going to walk up and say, yeah, here's your money. To an evangelist or something. It would not be good. There may be areas in the country you can get away with that, maybe, but I would not advise it.
Philadelphia.
I wasn't going to say it.
Baltimore, definitely.
Yo, Rev, you cashed out. Enough respect.
We're out of here.
It'll be rolling through our van too. He's like,
Oh, man. So the ruling elder or pastor has a right to receive the saints' material things, since he ministers to them spiritual things. But Paul chose not to take remuneration, from the Corinthians for personal reasons. Perhaps there were many problems that he did not want to complicate by giving anyone an opportunity to actually criticize him for an impure motive or something like that. Double honor means that the elders who lead well are to be compensated generously, amply, according to their position and ability. Okay? The reference is to elders who demonstrate particular excellence and leadership ability and teaching ability, not to a supposed distinction between ruling elders and teaching elders. 1 Timothy 4, verses 6 through 16, lists some actual pertinent criteria to aid in such a determination. Okay. Perhaps this description includes factors such as clear thinking, ability to communicate well, sound judgment, and even-handed administration. Okay. So this is definitely somebody that when we see they're an individual who stands above the rest as having those items, whereas, and you know, when you're around a group of people like this, you're going to have your elders, but there's going to be that one who particularly just stands above all of them, you know, and they kind of tend to look to them. What should we do? What do you think? You know, what are your thoughts on this? They're always seeking kind of a direction or something else. Those are worth double honor. All right, so in verse 18, for the scripture saith, thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn. The labor is worthy of his reward. Okay. Men who are called of God will preach whether they are paid or not, but it is God's plan for them to live off of their ministry. To illustrate this point, this verse uses the figure of the ox treading out grain, citing Deuteronomy 12:25 and 4. The ox that pulls the stone or sled to crush the grain is allowed to eat as he goes. In other words, if the ox provides food for you, you should provide his. Much increase is by the strength of the ox. Just as it would be unjust to muzzle the ox, so it would be unfair to refuse to pay the preacher. We are supposed to support the one who teaches us. Okay.
I said, well, what about ox drool? How do you handle that? Ox drool? Yeah, ox drool. You eating, going around,
That's
rolling
nasty.
on the.
Maybe
Say.
maybe bake it out.
I hope so.
I don't even think about that.
That's what just came out. I really like it. What about ox drool?
All right, so verse 19. Against an elder receive not an accusation, but before 2 or 3 witnesses. This verse actually introduces the idea of protecting elders or ensuring their safe and just treatment. It is a sacred trust to be in the ministry, and a minister's effectiveness is based upon his integrity, his credibility, and his believability. If he can be discredited and his mouth effectively stopped, it would be a major victory for the enemies of the church. Rumors, innuendos, half-truths, and outright lies are often the ammunition fired at the minister. Should these be given a full hearing at every turn of the road, he could be worn down and discredited whether charges are actually true or not. Okay? No doubt some believe that Jesus himself was what some of the religious elders called him: a wine bibber, a glutton, and an associate of drunks, prostitutes, and zealots. Therefore, when someone comes with a formal accusation, categoria, I can pronounce that one. Categoria is the word. Against an elder, the administrative overseer must make sure that at least 1 or 2 others will vouch for the veracity of the charges, okay, and the sincerity of the one making the charge. So, if they've got a charge they're making, their credibility is going to be called front and center as well. Because if their credibility is very weak, I think you can really understand where that's going to go and how far.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Really doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you have someone who consistently cries wolf or something else, and they're bringing an accusation, and you're like, did anyone else hear this as well, or see this, or do you have any other witnesses, or, oh no, it's just my word. Your word's not really exactly what we would call. I think we know why. You might be able to name out the reasons at that point. So it really takes into effect. Now, if you have someone on the other hand who is pretty stand-up individual, who's consistently very forthcoming, very truthful, their background leaves really nothing to be questioned in a lot of ways, and that's someone's like, well, okay, we should probably hear it out, give at least an ear. And it's like, do you have witnesses? Yes. Oh, all right. Well, here's a credible person who's coming with a formal complaint or an accusation, has witnesses, their background is pretty impeccable. You got to hear them out. That's something you actually got to give form to. Now, this provision constitutes tremendous protection for the pastor. Those who have to investigate charges of wrongdoing would be kept busy by gossips if they had to research every rumor thoroughly, okay, which is true. We kind of, when I was in law enforcement, we worked under the premise of when I had something brought before me, or a rumor, when I used to pick up things in different areas in the street and stuff. I might hear a lie, but what I always found out was that every lie, no matter what, there's always about 10% truth to that lie.
Yeah.
So there's a base for that lie. What you're hearing is not totally accurate, but you, if you're careful and able enough, you can actually pick through the lie enough and figure out what really is basis and what's not. And then you're able to kind of start tearing apart things and piecing things together. And sure enough, you might be able to find something out maybe. It's amazing how it works though. The one we used to hook in interrogations, we had a technique that we used, and you have to learn it. It's actually a learned process, but you learn it both by experience and through classroom techniques and procedures. But I guarantee going through, we used to have a 9-step process. I won't go into too much detail or anything else, but within 9 steps, 9 procedural steps, I may not even have to reach number 9. I might only get you to 4 or 5, and you're already confessing to what you've done by doing what this does. And I try now, there's a lot of times where I have to pull back in my private life when I'm talking to someone, and I'm like seeing flags go up, and I'm like, whoa, wait. And I start pushing into them, and I'm employing like one of these 9 steps in the process, and I'm like, I gotta pull back because this is not good.
Right.
And someone will say, well, wow, why are you getting all aggressive? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go. It's like, oops, I just saw something I shouldn't have, and I'm gonna just be quiet and shut up. I'm gonna go away now, okay? But then someone else will come to me later, and they'll say, well, what do you think about? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't personally have anything to do with that, but you make your own judgment decision. I don't want you to just run off on my opinion, but me personally, I don't want anything to do with it. Oh, okay. That's all I'm gonna say. It's like,
Carl, the
take it for what it
Inquisitors.
is. Take it for what it is. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, it's how they break people. It's amazing. You can actually get a person to the point where they feel sorry for themselves. And there's some that you will never get to crack.
Right.
You know through the process that they're guilty, guaranteed, but they may never crack. There's a large portion though, they will crack.
Yeah.
And by the time you're done, you're actually saying, don't you feel better? They do in some ways, and in a lot of ways they don't either, because now they're like, I'm going to jail for a long time. It's like, yeah, you probably are. But you did tell the truth.
But
You feel
I'm
good.
super honest about it.
Yes. You got it off your chest, didn't you?
See, we're dead, it's funny.
The truth does set you free, just
yeah.
physically. But you feel better now, don't you?
Truth sets you free.
A good behavior, you'd be out earlier on parole.
Yes. Maybe 15 to 20. If they don't run consecutive. Terms, that is. I'm sorry, anyway. So, or when someone charges another person has wronged him, Scripture requires the accuser first meet the accused person, or the accused personally, then have a private conference with one or more additional persons present. The third step described here is to bring the matter before the church. That's when it's getting heavier. If the personal meeting and the conference have failed to resolve the matter, the case then comes before church leadership. So as you can see, there's an elevated process. Okay, you go through step 1. Okay, you didn't get the ending that you needed and the results that you were looking for. Okay, now we go to step 2. All right, step 2 failed. We employed it, didn't work. All right, well, go to step 3. Now we're at this final point. That's kind of like what we used to do back in PD too. We go to step 1, step 2, step 3, so forth. In verse 20, them that sin rebuke before all, that others also may fear. So you can kind of see where this is headed. Should the process determine guilt on the part of an elder, then public rebuke becomes necessary. Okay. Such public disclosure and rebuke would make other elders think again before committing any similar offense. Okay, so they basically be made an example of at this point. In verse 21, I charge thee before God and the Lord Jesus Christ and the elect angels that thou observe these things without preferring one before another, doing nothing by partiality. Okay. Verse 21, we see, because a fellow elder appears involved, there is doubtless pressure on the minister in charge to go easy in such a situation. All right. But in this verse reminds him that God and even the elect, holy, unfallen angels are witnesses. All right. Under no circumstances should the minister or church show favoritism for one person over another. Judgment in such matters must be impartial. Okay? It has to be. Even in just in a common sense related item here, if you are to show partiality in one arena towards one person on a charge, whatever, okay, offense, later having another person come in showing impartiality, how can anyone really bring things before you with good faith, knowing that you're going to actually judge the way that it should be? You're not going to get a fair shake at it. You know, you've totally just ruined your credibility in that respect as a whole. So the actual process has broken down for any future whatever. Okay, so it's kind of a rough way. Verse 22, lay hands suddenly on no man, neither be partaker of other men's sins. Keep thyself pure. So in verse 21, verse 22, emphasizes the importance of ordaining only those who are worthy of the title of elder. Haste in placing men into the ministry who are too young or unproven can result in their failure. All right, thereby causing those who ordain them to share in the responsibility for their failings. Okay, if a man is closely examined before his ordination, it may save having to discipline him later. Okay. His appointment should be based on his positive qualifications, his record, and his character, rather than merely the absence of sin. If you can understand what that means. Okay. So, just to live a life absent of sin does not make you qualified. Okay. You actually have to have some qualifications and a proven track record. The warning about participation in such appointments is underscored by this sobering admonition. Keep thyself pure. Not only does this phrase speak of carefulness in the ordination process, but perhaps the emphasis is on thyself. While dealing with the moral character of others, the leader is to keep himself honorable, upright, and beyond reproach. Basically, the person that you're recommending or we're looking for, it's around the tip of my tongue too.
Vouching for?
Basically, yes. They're an extension of you.
Right.
So by you saying, yes, I endorse this person, that's what I was looking for. It would come eventually. That person now having failed or fallen is almost basically a reproach on you and your endorsement, because now they start to call into question, well, yeah, he endorsed them. He is a stand-up, pastor or an elder, but
They start calling into question your judgment, possibly.
yeah, I mean, it's like, wow, what happened there? Like, you didn't see this? This guy was like under him, and he just like, I don't get it, and you can understand at this point where this might happen once or even a couple times. The individual doing the endorsements is very gun shy, so to speak, in layman's terms. He's not very quick to want to even possibly put people who are good or worthy before as an endorsement.
Right.
Okay, become ordained. So it's a process. I mean, and unfortunately, it happens, and we do have to take into effect the human factor. Okay, people are human. People fail, people fall, people mess up. The biggest thing is, if you fall or you fail, okay, make sure you get back up. Because if you stay down, now that's where the damage comes. Okay. That's probably the best piece of advice I could ever put forth out there. Just get up. You gotta keep getting up. If you don't get up, you're dead. Alright? You've already lost. So, but by doing that, by falling down and staying down, you're also dragging down others with you. You know, it's not just you that's going down, you're taking several others down with you in flames as well. Alright, so verse 23, drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake and thine often infirmities. We're going to touch on some of this also in Life and Times of Christ tonight, real quick. The whole wine and drunkenness issue, to put it mildly. And I see fingers abounding. That's
Somebody
wine.
going to the bar.
Ooh. Is that an endorsement? So verse 23, Paul recommended Timothy actually take advantage of the medicinal values of wine, okay, used in the Septuagint for both fermented and unfermented grape juice. This statement in no way justifies a Christian's drinking of alcoholic beverages. I'll say it again. Do not go out and drink the night away.
It justifies if you're drinking water filled with parasites. Kill them.
Exactly. That's called purification in another way.
Yeah.
Paul simply proved the use of wine when wine may have been medicinally helpful. Okay. In our day of medical advances, wine is not of significant medical help.
Yeah.
Certainly not enough to make it worthwhile to jeopardize one's character, reputation, and example in the community. You cannot walk into a bar and say, I'm getting a little bit for my infirmity. I shall be out. It's for medicinal only. No, not pot, not alcohol, not...
Most of you get away with, I've got this massive cut on my arm that I just got. Quick, pour something on it. That's about it.
That's as close as
On
you
my
can
arm, yeah. This is an emergency. Pour it on my arm.
And you know what? Unfortunately, I did run across people who actually were so bad off, they drank rubbing alcohol.
Oh,
Yeah, they were so, I mean, they were hard.
that's what some alcohol smells like, though.
Yeah.
Rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, stuff like your Mad Dog.
That's why I'm like, how do you drink that?
You can run
Doesn't
cars
it?
off that. Just about.
Yeah.
You really can.
You can actually
Worst off with a breath actually on your gas tank to help if you have water in it.
Yeah. I really did.
How can you,
When I was in the PD, I actually would come across calls where people were actually drinking isopropyl rubbing alcohol, which causes blindness and a number of other issues health related. But they were such hardcore alcoholics that that's what they were drinking. Literally, it was bad. Just trying to get a high off of it.
I mean,
As
that stuff
insane as that is.
can kill you easily. Just,
Yep.
oh my goodness.
Trying to do it off of bath salt.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty sad actually. I mean, yeah, you're in a really bad off way when you're doing that. But anyway, so the best rule for Christians to follow is stated in 1 Corinthians 10:31. Okay, wherefore, whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do all to the glory of God. Okay.
Yeah.
Do not be going out and toasting all to the glory of God. That's not going to work. I'm adding a little bit of humor in there, but I think you get the point. Verses 24 and 25. Some men's sins are open beforehand, going before to judgment, and some men they follow after. Likewise, also the good works of some are manifest beforehand, that they are otherwise cannot be hid. Okay. So, this difficult passage, okay, is likely a continuation of the warning in verse 22. To ordain only men who appear to be fully qualified, and perhaps it also relates to the discussion in verses 19 through 21 also, which is regarding the judgment of elders. All right. I really wish I could speak Greek. Protolis. Okay, I'm gonna write this out because I just cannot. I need a tutor for Greek. Protolis. I lost my place for my notes here. One second. Clearly, it means here, clearly evident and known to all. Okay, so it means clearly evident and known to all. Some sins are manifest and obviously precede the perpetrator to judgment, while others are not in evidence and will show up later, following the offender to the bar of judgment and coming into view there. In the Amplified Bible. Excuse me. So likewise, some people's good works are quite evident at the present time, and they can be used to help qualify them for ministerial appointment. But certain poor character qualities may not show up for a while. Only time and circumstances will actually bring full disclosure all the way around. So, with that being said, yeah. And I do believe that is where I left my notes off for this week. So yes, that brings Pastoral Epistles to a conclusion tonight.